Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 145 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Nealon, CEO of Greek University. We call these episodes Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. Now, make sure you go and check out our new book. We released it 1 month ago. It's called From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impact on Your College Campus and Beyond. It is available on your Kindle, only $2.99, a deal. Or you can have the paperback for only $9.99 on Amazon. Go check that out. Now, today we have a great treat for you. I am so excited about this interview. I've been thinking about it for the past couple of weeks now. We have with us Frank King. He is a 6-time TEDx Talker, TEDx and speaker marketing coach. He is a former writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years. He fought a lifetime battle with depression and thoughts of suicide, turning that long, dark journey of the soul into 5 TEDx Talks and sharing his insights on suicide prevention and post-vention with corporations, associations, and college audiences. He's also had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a massive heart attack, and 3 stents, and lived to joke about it all. So I promise you, he is truly funny at heart. You are going to laugh, you are going to learn, and you're going to leave this podcast and Frank's programs absolutely loving life. Welcome to the show, Frank.
That was quite the introduction. Thank you very much. And by the way, yeah, you are correct. My 6th TEDx talk is June. And I'm in the process of applying for my 7th one, which is mental health and the orgasm, treat your depression single-handedly. I'm not sure, pretty much sure not every TEDx committee is going to like that, but if a committee likes it, they will undoubtedly love that. So
I absolutely love everything about you. I can't wait to jump into this. I'm sure our audience wants to know how they can get their own TEDx talk. We're going to get into all of that. I promise. But, you know, our listeners are mostly college students and college administrators, and I think they might be interested in your background and your undergraduate experience. You decided on UNC Chapel Hill for your undergraduate experience. So why did you choose UNC?
Well, I was born and raised in Raleigh. I applied both at North Carolina State and UNC, and North Carolina State was a little too close to my house. So Chapel Hill being 30 minutes away, which means not far enough away to be away, but close enough to come home and do laundry. So that was why. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any idea why I was in college. I mean, I told my first joke in the 4th grade, 12th grade. I did a talent show, first person to ever do stand-up. I won. I told my mom I'm going to be a comedian, and she said, and I quote, "Son, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you are going to be a goat herder with a college degree." So I majored in the thing that was the easiest, which is poli-sci, political science. Because there's no right answer, really. If you can BS hard enough, you can get a C, and, you know, C's get degrees, as we all know. It was, and by the way, there are worse things than a good liberal arts education, and comedians, especially because comedian is something of a generalist. I know a little bit about a lot of things and a lot about nothing. So a liberal arts degree was absolutely perfect. Chapel Hill is a lovely town, a great place to go to college. 10,000 women at the time. Majority of them, you know, I imagine probably all of them, since I'm not that handsome, would have been fine. But I was dating a young woman out of state, so, you know, I did not avail myself of, as a friend of mine said, of local resources. Anyway.
I love it. Well, listen, that's certainly a story. There's no question about it. UNC is a beautiful campus, so it worked out just fine for you, I'm sure. Now, you were a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years. I'm a huge fan of The Tonight Show. So what was that experience like?
Well, what happened was Jay Leno was the permanent guest host when I started comedy in the mid-'80s. And Johnny Carson would come in on a Friday and go, "I'm taking next week off." Well, Mondays was Best of Carson, a rerun. It meant Jay had 4 nights, Tuesday through Friday, 18 jokes per monologue that he had to create over the weekend. So he started hiring road comics under contract as contractors to fax in. Back in the day, we were called fax writers, I faxed in 2 dozen jokes a day so that he would have plenty for those 4 nights when he was the guest host. And I was getting on a couple a week. And then when he got the show for real, let most of the contract players go. But he kept me and a bunch of other guys on. And I wrote with him until he left for CNBC in his car show. So, yeah, and he's a nice guy. Matter of fact, I'm a co-author and narrator of 4 books on men's mental health. And the 3rd one just came out. And I sent a copy to Helga, who is his assistant, but I've spoken to many times, and asked if Jay would do a blurb for the book. And the reason I thought Jay might do it, A, because I worked with him all that time, and B, the men's mental health book, we made it look like an automobile owner's manual so guys would actually pick it up. And it's full of automobile metaphors. Don't you wish the guy in your life had a check engine light, like a mental check engine light? You know, it goes off, he goes to the mental mechanic, the guy puts him up on the rack and goes, Bob, no wonder you're depressed. You're 2 quarts low on serotonin. So I'm hoping Leno will like the idea that we made it look like an automobile owner's manual, and he would put a little, blurb on the outside. So
that would be very nice. He certainly did.
By the way,
well.
Great guy.
Yeah.
When I had my first aortic valve replacement, somebody else told him I was in the hospital having heart surgery. When I got out of ICU and was able to pick up my messages back when we had answering machines, first message on there, Leno, hey, heard you had heart surgery. Good thing they didn't do it in LA. They take it out and leave it out. So
that's very good. That is very, very good. Listen, he did very well over those 20 years. So certainly I hope he gives you the blurb on the book, if nothing else.
That would be, well, and when he left the Tonight Show, I wanted to do a video, talking about my speaking. Yeah. And he goes, CNBC don't really want me to do any video. Tell you what I'll do. If you ever need anything, something like, and so I've been sitting on that favor for 10 years, waiting for just the right moment to drop it. And so, so that's why I sent his assistant an actual copy of the book so he could, hold it, see it, and maybe he'll be nice enough to give me a, blurb.
That would be great. That would be fantastic. Now, another really interesting thing about you is you hold the record for the longest nonstop comedy club road trip ever, beginning the day after Christmas in 1985. You and your wife, who, by the way, should be immediately recognized for sainthood, you were on the road 2,629 nights in a row, going from comedy club to comedy club, cheap motel room to cheap motel room, with no home, just a P.O. box and voicemail. Along the way, you're working with Jerry Seinfeld, Jeff Foxworthy, Ron White, Adam Sandler, Dennis Miller, Ellen DeGeneres, Rosie O'Donnell, Kevin Nealon, and Kevin James, among others. You have to tell us, what was it like to work with all of these comedy all-stars?
Well, we didn't just work together. Back then, they oftentimes, to save money, rather than put it up in a hotel, they would rent a 3-bedroom condo and they would turn it every week and have a cleaning service come in between the comics. So we didn't just work with these guys. We lived with them for a week at a time. For my lovely wife, it was something like living in a frat house. But you know what? In the beginning, there was a little pushback about the guy. Guy brought his wife with him. I was the opening act and I had my wife with me. They're like, what? But they actually fell in love with her. This is what it would look like a couple of years into it. I'd be walking up the sidewalk towards the condo, and the comics that are already there, the other 2, are going, hey, Frank, where's Wendy? Because, if somebody said, I don't have time to eat and iron my pants to get to the show, Wendy would go, I'll iron the pants, you eat. So she is deserving of saying, because when I invited her, I said, I'm going to go on the road to be a stand-up comic full time. Do you want to come along for the ride? Thinking she'd go, oh, hell no. And she goes, yeah. So we were on the road all that time. And, some of it was good week-long clubs like the Improv, the Punchline, the Funny Bones. The thing that held the tour together, though, were those horrible, one-nighters, beer bars, pool halls, honky-tonks, drunk idiots screaming, tell us some jokes we can dance to. Here comes a slow one, you can slow dance. Yeah. I mean, it was in bad motels. I was just talking the other day about it. It's called the Berkeley in Fort Lauderdale. And I got into bed and I felt like something was chewing on me that first night. So I thought, well, I'll change beds, which is a bad idea because the crabs in the first bed were satiated. I got in the second bed and of course they hadn't eaten in quite some time. So the next morning I called the front desk and I said, I believe your linen has given me, body lines, crabs. And the guy said, and I quote, "If you will purchase the crab shampoo, we will happily reimburse you," which means A, he wasn't surprised, and B, it had happened before. Yeah.
And
Explain to
C,
your
he
wife.
wanted to profit.
Yeah. Explain to your wife how you got crabs from the Leno. Oh, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Honey, I
God.
brought you something and it's not on the luggage carousel.
That is
Yes. It was, yeah, the one-nighters were, but I mean, it was an adventure. We were in our mid-20s to mid-30s. I mean, who doesn't want to just pitch it all, get in a car with a gorgeous blonde and drive around the country telling jokes and working with those people like Ron White is funnier off stage and on. By the way, that is scotch in the glass. It's not Diet Coke. He'd be telling a story at the condo after we got done with the show. All right, he says, I'm in Amarillo, Texas. I'm with a hooker and a midget. Okay. Any story that starts with I'm with a hooker and a midget, I don't care if my bladder explodes. I'm not going anywhere until I find out how this turns out.
Oh my God.
That's just how Ron was, and Foxworthy, and you know, I mean, it was an amazing time to be alive and doing stand up.
Wow, what a crew to be rolling with. Now, you know, it's not all wonderful times. You fought a lifetime battle with depression and you had thoughts of suicide. So I'm wondering, you know, for all of the college students that are listening right now, how can we screen, assess, and reduce the risk of suicide on college campuses?
Well, and 3 college students every day die by suicide, and that was the number before COVID.
Right.
So I'm guessing it's worse now. You know, and the stresses and strains are not that much different than when I was at Chapel Hill, except, you know, bullying back then was very up close and personal. It was, you know, the towel snap in the locker room or whatever. Nowadays with social media, it's just and yeah, and I had no idea how bad it could be. I'm 64 years old. How can you bully somebody online? Well, I made a little mistake last February by coming back from Cambodia at the beginning of the pandemic, and everybody thought I came back dragging the virus. And so the trolls came after me. And I mean, I had to change my home phone number. People published a map to my house, shut down 3 social media accounts for 3 weeks, and handled the death threats. A guy calls up and he goes, "You came back to this county to kill everybody." I go, "No, I've got a list and you just made the VIP section." Another guy called to threaten my life. He goes, "I know where you work out. I know what time you work out. I'm coming to kill you." I said, "Well, I've been trying to do that for 40 years. Good luck. And B, I don't want to die, but I'm not scared of it. So just make sure you include that in your calculations before you show up at the gym. Do you really want to take on a guy with nothing to lose?" So he never showed up. But yeah, what I do on campus, and also when I speak to corporation associations, here's the deal. The good news is 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. They're not sure. And 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to the attempt, which tells me the vast majority of people want somebody to notice something, say something, interrupt. And so that's what I teach, because people will say to me, so-and-so died by suicide. He never gave any hints. We had no idea. Well, he probably did give hints, but you didn't know what to look and listen for. So I teach signs and symptoms, depression, thoughts of suicide, what to say, also what not to say, what to do, definitely what not to do. For example, with depression, if it turns out they have depression, you shouldn't say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, turn that frown upside down. Have you tried fish oil? You should say, I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not lazy, crazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness, but with time and treatment, things will get better, and I'll take the time. I'll help you get the treatment. And then you have to ask the question that even I have trouble with. Are you having thoughts of suicide? And if you can't ask that question, you find somebody who can. Yeah, there's an old urban legend, you should never mention the S word, suicide, in front of somebody who's depressed. As a comedian, I love the reasoning. It might give them the idea. Oh yeah, like that never crossed my mind. Suicide, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Trust me, it's crossed my mind. So that's what I do when I'm on campus is I talk about, because everybody at that point becomes what they call a gatekeeper. Everybody begins, I'm speaking at Lemoyne College tomorrow evening. It's a little college. I think it's in Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm doing it virtually. So, yeah, but they've had 4,000 students, and I was talking to the administrator yesterday and the student, in the committee, and I said, it's a community. College is a giant community. It's like a big small town, and if you can teach everybody to look after everybody else, it's called gatekeeper training. because you can't unlearn. If I tell you what the signs and symptoms of depression and thoughts of suicide are, and you can spot those, and what you're looking for is a pattern, then you can interrupt. And obviously, if 8 out of 10 are ambivalent, 9 out of 10 give hints, they want you to interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can stop a suicide. It's the most preventable cause of death on the planet. And so that's what I do is I teach, and really, and this happens about 90% of the time, when I get there to college campus, the whoever's in charge says, we really just brought you in here to start the conversation on suicide. Because if I get up on stage, especially as a guy, and I'm vulnerable, and I talk about my mental illness and my, I tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like, and I get a little choked up telling those stories. It gives everybody in the audience permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences surrounding depression and thoughts of suicide. So I'm kind of giving them cover. Mm-hmm. And it happens. I mean, I've talked to meeting planner after meeting planner. Frank, you have no idea what happened after you left. I mean, people came to the student mental health services that I'd never seen before, that had no idea they had any issues. And they said, well, listen, Frank came to campus and he mentioned this. And I think, that's exactly what I have, I do believe, but I need to get an evaluation. Mm-hmm. So now I did have one college down in Texas who refused to bring me in. I mean, I was this close, almost signed the paperwork. Somebody on the staff said, we can't have him come to this campus and mention the word suicide, because if somebody dies by suicide, because he suggested it, the parents are going to blame us. And it's just the reverse. I mean, they've been lucky. They haven't had one yet, but it's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. Much better to bring it out in the open, drag it out in the sunshine, talk about it, and reduce the stigma. Right. Be able to talk about it without recrimination, because there's a stigma to mental illness and a separate stigma to thoughts of suicide. Mm-hmm. So it's that's really my job, just to come in, bare my soul, start the conversation. There's a song by Big and Rich. It's called "Somebody Has to Be Unafraid to Lead the Freak Parade." That's me. Yeah. Come in, I let my freak flag fly, and I rally my tribe. And I tell you, I have something called chronic suicidal ideation, which means that for me and people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. When I say small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden: get it fixed, buy a new one, or I could just kill myself. Every time I've spoken, except once since 2014, every college I've been to, there's been at least one person in the audience who has that, and they did not know it had a name. They thought they were just some kind of freak and all alone. I did a college, and a young woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, "Thank you for your keynote." I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." I said, "How did it make you weep?" She goes, your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, kill yourself?" She goes, "I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know it had a name. I just thought I was some kind of freak and all alone. And I heard you say that out loud." She said, and realized for the first time in my life that I am not alone, and I wept. So it's possible I've steered her just far enough off the path of suicide with that little piece of information that she'll live a normal life. And I was at University of Montana Billings shortly after that, and I did a speech. A young woman came up to me afterwards, same story. And I'm standing outside waiting for the young man to come back with a truck to take me back to the hotel. Well, there's a river in the distance. I can hear the water. It's starting to snow and it's dusk. So I think all this plays into what you're about to hear. I'm thinking about all the people that have come up afterwards, all the people whose lives maybe I steered just far enough just by being there and reassuring them. And it hit me that I'm like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what people's lives would be like if I were not there to say, "Hey, you're not alone." Mm. And my second thought was, oh, great. Now I can't kill myself, because if I did, I would take all those people with me who never got a chance to hear me say that. So I'm afraid I'm stuck, Michael.
Well, that's a good thing for college audiences, because more people need to hear you talk about it, remove the stigma. The fact that you are a male is fantastic. We need more men talking about this on college campuses. And, I guess my question is, let's assume for a moment that we are living in the same fraternity house. We have a brotherhood of 100 men that are living in this house. Give me some examples of what I should be looking out for. Show me what are the objects, the substances, the actions that are common in suicide attempts.
Okay. Well, one is has trouble getting out of bed in the morning.
Okay.
But rallies in the afternoon. So, late to class, or can't make the 8 o'clock class, but then, always seems to make the afternoon classes or makes it to the intramurals game or whatever. Eat too much, can't eat. Sleep too much, can't seem to sleep. Here's a big one, letting their personal hygiene go. If they're usually well put together and you notice hair's a little dirty, clothes aren't quite so clean, it may be because they can't drag themselves out of the bed, to take a shower, shave, and run a little wash. And again, the thing not to say is pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right.
If you suspect they're depressed and you ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? If they're not forthcoming, then the question is, how do you know your brother or your sorority sister is having thoughts of suicide? Well, they talk about death and dying. You catch them Googling death and dying. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork, their music, their writing. They're getting their affairs in order, giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure the possessions go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Assembling the means to die by suicide, whether it's medications or buying a gun. And here's one that is counterintuitive and terribly dangerous. They've been depressed forever, and then all of a sudden they're happy beyond measure, and for no apparent reason. Now you're happy because thank God they're finally happy. Well, what may be happening is they may have chosen time, place, and method, and they're happy because they know the pain is finite. A lot of people don't understand that suicide is not so much about wanting to kill yourself as simply ending the pain. So once you've decided time, place, method, and I had when I came so close, then you feel that relief because it at some point soon is going to end. So let's say they do say they're having thoughts of suicide. What do you say then if they drop that grenade in your lap? You say simply, do you have a plan? And if they have a plan, what is your plan? And if it's detailed, time, place, method, you need to get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or now they have for younger people, the Suicide Prevention text line. You text the word help or connect to 741-741. Now, if your fraternity brother, sorority sister, whatever, won't pick up the phone, you pick up the phone, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and the volunteer will do their best to talk the phone into the hand of the person who's in crisis. Question always come up, when do you dial 911? When do you call the campus cops or whatever? If they're in immediate danger to themselves or somebody else, you've got no choice. But bear this in mind. In most states, if you do that, they will be taken into custody and taken before a judge, and the judge will decide whether they are to have a IDO, involuntary detention order, which is a lovely 3-day, all expenses paid vacation in a gated mental health facility with no shoestrings or belt. Now they're going to be pissed. They'll probably unfriend you on Facebook, but they'll be alive. So, you really have to step out of your comfort zone. Now, lastly, let's say they've got a plan, but it's not really well formed. Time, place, method. What do you do? And this is not in a textbook anywhere. A psychiatrist friend and I, who both have chronic suicidal ideation, came up with it. If it's not a well-formed plan, simply say to them, well, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, and I think this is the most important question, then tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever it is keeping them here on the planet. I think that's very powerful. And if you ask me, I would say, well, because I've realized I'm like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I kill myself, I'll take all those people with me who never got a chance to hear me say you're not alone. So, if somebody is still here, there's a reason. It's their family, their friends, their animals, whatever. Find out what that is. A couple of other things. If you're going to talk to somebody privately about their depression, if they want to get, because people always ask me, my roommate is depressed. What do I say? Well, first of all, don't say anything. Just listen actively. B, pick a time and place where they would be comfortable and you're relatively private. C, make sure you don't have anything backed up against it, like another appointment. Make sure you are in a good place personally. You're well and you're well rested. And brace yourself for what will probably be some disturbing information you're going to get from your friend. And park your judgment. In other words, let's say you believe if you kill yourself, you go straight to hell. Keep that to yourself. Unless that's what they believe. In other words, don't layer your religious and philosophical beliefs on top of theirs. Meet them where they are. I'm not particularly religious. However, if somebody said, I'm struggling, I'm having thoughts of suicide, I would say, well, are you strong in Christ? And if they say yes, I go, well, do you have a minister? Is there a minister? Do you have a church nearby? Well, what do you say you and me and your minister get together? We'll form a team. We'll see if we can't tackle this. Even though I'm not particularly religious, I want to leverage whatever they believe, whatever. Because, I mean, if you are strong in Christ, faith is a powerful weapon in that war. And so we could leverage that to keep them, sticking around. So anyway, that's that's what I teach on campus, is those things. So everybody becomes a gatekeeper for everybody else. So all of a sudden you're watching and picking up. And I tell people, look, after you hear me speak, if you walk by somebody, a friend, and you think intuition screams at you, something's wrong, I think he may be depressed, always go with your gut. Better to ask and find out he just pulled an all-nighter and that's why he's so down, than to not ask and then have survivor's guilt. Oh man, I thought something was wrong and I didn't ask. Because that's what happens, is everybody, I wish I'd been nicer to them. I was going to go have a beer, but I had to do whatever, and I didn't, and he might still be alive. So yeah, so it's my job again, Michael, is just to come onto campus and start the conversation. And and normally when I come on campus, the people from the mental health service sit in the back of the room, the psychologists and so forth, watching me. I can't tell you how many times that's happened, because they're like, because they're waiting for me to step in it. But I've done my homework. I've got the lived experience. I know what the barrel of my gun tastes like. I live with depression and thoughts of suicide constantly. Somebody said to me, "When's the last time you thought about suicide?" I said, "Well, what time is it?" What? I mean, that's chronic suicidal ideation. It's it's just the way, and it's not a serious thought. Because if my car broke down, I could probably buy another one if I had to. But yeah, it's just the way. It's a coping mechanism. And strangely, Michael, it keeps me alive, because I know I can end my life at any time. I can stand a great deal of pain, knowing that I can make it come to an end anytime. So ironically, my chronic suicidal ideation keeps me alive.
Students ask me this question. They want to know how they can be a speaker. And you've done 6 TEDx talks on mental health, which is just amazing. So how can any of our listeners find their idea worth spreading?
Well, I talk about this in a number of my TEDx. Seth Godin, marketing guru, in his TED talk, "The Tribes We Lead," 2009, said, "Look, if you want an idea worth spreading," and that's the heart and soul of a TEDx, one idea worth spreading, you find 2 things: your tribe and a vacuum. My tribe is people who live with mental illness, for whom the option of suicide is always on the menu. And the vacuum is, even though 1 person dies by suicide in the US every 9 minutes, nobody talks about it unless you bring it up. You mention the word depression and suicide out loud, and everybody's got a story. I mean, people have told me the most amazing things. People I just met, stuff they never told their family. I was on a cruise ship doing comedy, and I was having breakfast with one of the passengers, and she goes, "Do you do anything besides comedy?" I go, "Yeah, I'm a public speaker." And I said, "I got to brag. I just nailed down a TED Talk." And she goes, "I love TED Talks. What's the topic?" Now, I thought I knew what was coming. So I said to her, "Depression and suicide," and started to count down in my head. 3, 2, 1. She goes, "I tried to kill myself twice." We have just met. First time she said, college, half-hearted, not a big deal. Second time, I'd graduated college, Frank. I'd graduated medical school. I had the knowledge, had the equipment. She goes, "I had the IV started in my ankle. Wow. Suicide cocktail in one hand, syringe in the other." And the phone rings, my 13-year-old son. I don't know if you heard something in my voice or had a premonition, but he said, "Mom, don't do anything." So I didn't. I didn't give up on the idea of suicide, she said, but I decided not to do it that day because he would always feel guilty. Wasn't there something he could do or say to save me from suicide? And as you and I have talked about, there are things you can do. There are things you can say to interrupt, because 8 out of 10 people are ambivalent, 9 out of 10 give hints. So that's the good news. And when I close my keynotes or my TEDx, I always say, the good news is you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as we're doing right here, which is starting a conversation.
I love it. That's really good. Now, we love good food here at Fraternity Foodie. So if I'm speaking in your neighborhood, what is your favorite restaurant in Springfield, Oregon?
It's a chain. I don't know if it's outside of Oregon. It's called Cafe Yum.
Okay.
YUMM exclamation point. And they do have, it's Oregon. I mean, it's a lot of vegans and vegetarians, but they also have chicken dishes and, but they've got bowls and meals. And they do have tofu and I mean, it's Oregon. You would have to. But it's called Cafe Yum, and a goodly number of them have survived the pandemic. Thank the Lord.
Thank God.
Just good, solid, big bowl full of, mostly the bowls are rice or something similar, and
Awesome. I'm going to go check it out. I love it. So if our listeners want to book you to speak on their college campus, maybe they want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to go?
I would go to thementalhealthcomedian.com, thementalhealthcomedian.com. And if you go there, put an email address in. We have a series of 4 books on men's mental health. I've voiced them for Audible. And if you put an email in, then there's a download of the first one, unabridged MP3, and I'm voicing it. So you get a little something for dropping by. And listen, if the students want to do a TEDx, there's a great book by a guy named Carmine Gallo, Gallo, called Talk Like TED. It's a great way, if you think I've got so many ideas, I'm passionate about so many things. He watched 500 TED Talks and boiled it down to 9 things he believes are in every great TED. So if you buy that book, I believe as you're working your way through it, it will occur to you, this is I got it. This is what I'm most passionate about. This is what I can't wait to share with people. And the way the TEDx works is, first third is your experience, messes and stresses. Second is what you learned. Second third. Last third, here's what I'm going to teach you. They're very particular. They want to make sure you teach the crowd something. That's why I always do, signs and symptoms, depression, thoughts of suicide, what to do, what to say, so that when they leave that hall and when it goes up on YouTube, because I get a DM or, whatever about once every 2 weeks from somebody who stumbled on it in some other country. And, I've been depressed all my life. I hadn't been happy when I can't remember when. I thought I was all alone, and wait for it, I came across your TED Talk and I realized, oh my God, I'm not alone. And so sometimes that's all it takes, to hold somebody back from doing something that you can't, reverse.
Yep, 100%. Thank you so much, Frank. This has been a lot of fun. I hope a lot of our listeners will call you, will email you, will go on the website, download the book, check it out. Frank King is the man. I appreciate all of your time. And
Can't they come to you, Michael, if they're looking for me? Can't they come to the
Sure, come to me and I'll put you in touch with Frank. I'll take a little commission, but other than that, Frank and I will work that out.
Hey man, commission's fine. I've been speaking for 35 years, and everybody gets it sliced, and I don't mind that a bit. I'd rather have 70 or 80% of something than 0% of nothing.
Amen, brother. Amen. All right. Have a great day. And thank you to our listeners. We hope to see you on another episode of Fraternity Foodie. Thanks so much. Bye for now.